I'm Lydia, 38 female. I live in a quiet suburban town with my daughter, Lily, in a home we've filled with laughter, books, and the scent of freshly baked cookies. By profession, I'm an event planner, a job that requires meticulous attention to detail, a calm demeanor under pressure, and the ability to orchestrate complex events seamlessly. My life is a carefully managed balance of single motherhood and a demanding career, and I pride myself on handling both with grace. But the story I'm about to tell you is about a time when grace was not enough, and a single text message became the catalyst for unraveling years of hidden resentment and painful family dynamics. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The phone call from my mother, Rachel, had come on a Tuesday afternoon, catching me between a client meeting and a venue walkthrough. Her voice was bright, almost effervescent, a tone she usually reserved for holidays or exceptionally good news. "Lydia, darling," she began, "I was thinking, since your father's birthday is coming up, we should do something special. A real family celebration." I paused, leaning against the cool brick of the historic building I was scouting. "That sounds nice, Mom. What did you have in mind?" My father, a man of simple tastes, was usually content with a quiet dinner and a new book. A real family celebration in my mother's vocabulary often meant something far more elaborate. "I want to host a party at the house," she announced. "A proper garden party. Your brother and his family will be there, of course, and I want you and Lily to come early. We'll celebrate together, just the core family, before the other guests arrive. It'll be our special time." The phrase core family sent a familiar, subtle pang through my chest. For years, it had felt like there was an inner circle and an outer one, and Lily and I were often relegated to the latter. My brother, Mark, his wife, Susan, and their two children, Jake and Chloe, were the sun around which our family's social life orbited. Mark was the successful firstborn, the financial advisor with the perfect family and the big house. I was the single mom, the one who had, in my mother's unspoken view, deviated from the expected path. Still, the invitation sounded genuine. "Come early," she had said. "We'll celebrate." It felt like an olive branch, a promise of inclusion. Lily adored her grandparents, and the idea of a special pre-party celebration would make her feel cherished. I decided to push my skepticism aside. "That sounds wonderful, Mom. We'd love that. What time should we be there?" 2 o'clock sharp, she said. "The other guests are invited for 3. That gives us a whole hour." An hour? It wasn't much, but in our family it was significant. I agreed, and as I hung up, a flicker of hope ignited within me. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe my mother was finally seeing me, seeing Lily as an integral part of the family, not just an obligatory addition. In the days leading up to the party, this hope grew. I took Lily shopping for a new dress, a lovely sunshine yellow one that matched her bright personality. We talked excitedly about seeing her cousins and celebrating Grandpa's birthday. For her, family events were a source of pure joy, untainted by the complex undercurrents I had learned to navigate. I found myself caught up in her enthusiasm, allowing myself to believe in the sincerity of my mother's promise. As an event planner, my instincts for logistics and atmosphere are finely tuned. I offered to help my mother with the arrangements, but she waved off my suggestions. "Don't you worry about a thing, dear," she said. "I have it all under control. Susan is giving me a hand." Susan, of course. My sister-in-law had appointed herself as my mother's right-hand woman years ago. She was the gatekeeper of family traditions, the enforcer of unspoken rules, and, I suspected, a key source of the narrative that I was somehow less than. Her help often felt more like a way to assert control than a genuine offer of assistance. Still, I respected my mother's wishes and backed off. The day of the party arrived, bright and sunny, a perfect day for a garden celebration. Lily was practically vibrating with excitement. She put on her new dress and twirled in front of the mirror, her blonde hair catching the light. "Do I look okay, Mommy?" she asked, her blue eyes wide with anticipation. "You look beautiful, sweetie," I told her, my heart swelling with love. Absolutely beautiful. We left with plenty of time to spare, a small gift for my father on the passenger seat. The drive to my parents' house was filled with Lily's happy chatter about what games she would play with Chloe and Jake. I felt a sense of calm, a willingness to embrace the day without preconceived notions. Today would be a good day. We pulled into the driveway at exactly 2 o'clock. The front yard was already immaculate, the lawn perfectly manicured, and pots of blooming flowers lining the walkway. I could see a large white tent set up in the backyard, and the murmur of what sounded like catering staff drifted from behind the house. It was certainly a grander affair than I had anticipated for a simple birthday. As we walked to the front door, I smoothed down Lily's dress and my own, taking a deep breath. This was it, our special hour. The door swung open before I could even ring the bell. My mother stood there, dressed in a floral hostess gown, her smile wide but not quite reaching her eyes. "Lydia, Lily, you're here," she said, her voice a little too loud. "Come in, come in." She ushered us into the foyer, and that's when I saw it. On a small table next to the entryway was a stack of name tags and a marker. My mother picked one up. "Here we are," she said, her tone businesslike. She handed it to Lily. I looked down at the tag. Neatly written in my mother's cursive was Lily's name, and underneath it, in smaller, starker letters, were 2 words, "Limited Guest." I stared at the name tag in my 10-year-old daughter's hand. Limited Guest. The words felt like a slap in the face, sharp and stinging. My mind struggled to process them. What could that possibly mean? This was her grandmother's house. This was a family celebration. We were invited early for a special time. Lily, bless her innocent heart, was simply confused. She looked from the tag to my face, her brow furrowed. "What does limited mean, Mommy?" she asked, her voice small. Before I could formulate an answer, one that would shield her from the cruelty I was beginning to suspect, my mother, Rachel, chimed in with a brisk, dismissive wave of her hand. "Oh, it's just for the caterers, dear, so they know who's who. Don't worry about it." She was already turning away, her attention drawn to some detail in the living room, leaving the toxic little piece of cardstock hanging in the air between us. The explanation felt thin, flimsy. I'm an event planner. I work with caterers all the time. Name tags might be used to identify staff or perhaps guests with dietary restrictions, but never to label a family member, a child, in such a degrading way. A cold knot of dread began to form in my stomach. Something was very wrong. I knelt down to Lily's level, forcing a smile that felt brittle. "It's just a silly tag, sweetie. Let's put it on your dress, and then we'll go find Grandpa." My fingers fumbled with the pin, the simple action feeling monumental. As I affixed the tag to her beautiful yellow dress, it felt like I was pinning a target on her. The stark white rectangle stood out against the bright fabric, a brand of otherness. We stepped further into the house. The living room was already arranged for guests, with extra seating and small tables. My father was nowhere in sight. Through the large glass doors leading to the patio, I could see my brother, Mark, his wife, Susan, and their kids, Jake and Chloe, gathered near a beautifully decorated dessert table. They were laughing, sampling what looked like miniature cheesecakes. They were the core family, already celebrating. We weren't early for a special pre-party gathering. We were simply on time for our designated and apparently limited role. Susan was the first to spot us. Her smile was tight, a carefully constructed facade of politeness. "Lydia, Lily, you made it." She glided over, her eyes immediately flicking down to the name tag on Lily's dress. A flicker of something, satisfaction, triumph, crossed her face before it was quickly masked. "Hi, Aunt Susan," Lily said, still trying to embrace the festive spirit. Mark turned, a half-eaten pastry in his hand. "Hey, Lydia, Lilybug." He was more adept at feigning warmth than his wife. He gave Lily a brief, one-armed hug. "Big day for Grandpa, huh?" My nephew and niece, Jake and Chloe, looked over. They were older than Lily, caught in that awkward preteen phase where casual cruelty often passed for humor. They both glanced at Lily's name tag, then exchanged a look. I saw Chloe whisper something to Jake, who stifled a snicker. The air was thick with unspoken things. The warmth of the sunny day outside seemed unable to penetrate the chilly atmosphere in this house. My mother was now flitting about, directing a member of the catering staff, her back to us. She was the architect of this scene, and she was deliberately avoiding my gaze. I tried to keep things normal for Lily's sake. "Where's Grandpa?" I asked, my voice strained. "He's getting changed," Mark said, taking another bite of his cheesecake. "He'll be down in a few minutes." He gestured vaguely toward the dessert table. "Go on, Lily, grab a treat." Lily's eyes lit up. She loved sweets, and the table was a child's dream, laden with cupcakes, cookies, and tarts. She took a step forward, her hand reaching for a chocolate-dipped strawberry. Ah, Susan said, stepping smoothly in her path. She wasn't smiling anymore. "Let's just wait a moment, shall we? We need to make sure there's enough for the real guests." The words hung in the air, sharp and pointed. Real guests. The implication was clear. We were not in that category. The limited guest tag wasn't for the caterers. It was a label, a classification. Lily's hand dropped. Her face fell, the light in her eyes dimming. She looked back at me, her confusion now mingled with the first shadow of hurt. She understood the tone, if not the precise meaning. She understood rejection. I felt a surge of protective fury, so intense it made my vision swim for a second. To do this to me was one thing. I had grown accustomed to the subtle slights and backhanded compliments. But to do this to my daughter, to deliberately and publicly humiliate a child, was unforgivable. I put my arm around Lily's shoulders and pulled her close. "You know what, sweetie?" I said, keeping my voice as even as I could. "Those strawberries don't look as good as the ones we have at home. Let's wait." I looked directly at Susan. My expression was a mask of cold neutrality, but my eyes conveyed a message I hoped she was smart enough to read. "You've crossed a line." She held my gaze for a moment before looking away, a faint, smug smile playing on her lips. She had gotten the reaction she wanted. She had established the hierarchy. The betrayal was no longer a suspicion. It was a certainty. The invitation, the promise of a special celebration, it was all a lie. It was a setup, a carefully orchestrated play designed to put me and my daughter in our place. They had used my hope for inclusion against me. They had used my love for my daughter as a weapon to wound me. And as Lily leaned against me, her small body tense with a hurt she was too young to fully comprehend, I knew that this was not something I could simply ignore or smooth over. This was a declaration of war. The next few minutes stretched into an eternity. We stood in a state of suspended animation, an island of awkward silence in the midst of the party preparations. My mother continued to bustle around, studiously avoiding us. Susan had returned to the dessert table, where she, Mark, and their children resumed their private celebration, their laughter now feeling like a deliberate taunt. I wanted to grab Lily, turn around, and walk out the door. But a part of me, the part that had endured years of this subtle emotional warfare, was screaming for answers. I needed to understand the full scope of this cruelty. Why? What was the purpose of this elaborate, hurtful charade? Lily was quiet beside me, her earlier excitement completely extinguished. She held my hand tightly, her small fingers clutching mine as if for a lifeline. I could feel the tremor of her suppressed tears. My brother, Mark, must have sensed the palpable tension. Perhaps a sliver of guilt had penetrated his self-satisfied bubble. He ambled over to us, wiping powdered sugar from his mouth with the back of his hand. "Look," he started, his voice lowered to a conspiratorial hush. "Don't take it personally." I stared at him, my eyebrows raised in disbelief. "Don't take it personally. Mark, what is going on? What does this limited guest tag mean?" He sighed, glancing over his shoulder to make sure our mother and Susan were out of earshot. "It's just Mom's thing. You know how she gets." The budget for the catering was tight. He was a terrible liar. My parents were comfortable. My brother was a successful financial advisor. A catering budget was not the issue. The sheer scale of the party, with a tent and professional staff, belied any notion of penny pinching. I didn't respond, just held his gaze, waiting for the truth. He faltered, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "Okay, look," he whispered, leaning closer. The air around him smelled of sugar and self-interest. "It means you can't eat the catered food." The whisper was more shocking than a shout. The words were so absurd, so utterly monstrous, that I almost laughed. We were at a family party, my father's birthday party, and my own mother had designated her granddaughter as someone who was not allowed to eat. "What?" The word came out as a strangled breath. "That means no food," he repeated, as if explaining a simple concept to a child. "The caterer is charging per head. Mom and Susan did a head count for the main guest list. You guys are extra." Extra, the word twisted in my gut. Not family, not even guests, just extra, superfluous. An add-on that came with a cost they weren't willing to bear. As if on cue, his two children, Jake and Chloe, who had been inching closer, drawn by the drama, overheard his whisper. Jake, at 14, was old enough to know better, but he possessed his father's casual arrogance. Chloe, at 12, idly zed her mother and mimicked her every cruelty. A cruel grin spread across Jake's face. He looked at Lily, still standing silently beside me, her eyes wide and glistening with unshed tears. Then he laughed. It wasn't a small chuckle, it was a loud, braying laugh full of derision. "Limited guest," he jeered, pointing at the tag on Lily's dress. "That means you don't get any cake." Chloe joined in, her laughter a high-pitched echo of her brother's. "Yeah, no food for you," she chanted, her voice sing-song and mocking. That was it, the breaking point. The sound of their laughter, the sight of their sneering faces directed at my daughter, it shattered the last vestiges of my composure. The carefully constructed dam of patience and tolerance I had built over years of family gatherings crumbled, and a cold, clear rage flooded through me. Lily finally broke. A sob escaped her lips, and she buried her face in my side, her small body shaking. She wasn't just confused or hurt anymore. She was humiliated, targeted, and bullied by her own family. I wrapped my arms around her, holding her tight, my body a shield against their poison. I glared at Mark, my eyes blazing. "Get your children," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "Get them and teach them some basic human decency." Mark had the grace to look momentarily ashamed. He shot a weak, "Hey, knock it off," at his kids, but there was no force behind it. They ignored him, still snickering. Susan, drawn by the commotion, now drifted back over. "What's all the fuss about?" she asked, a picture of feigned innocence. "The kids are just having a little fun." "Fun," I repeated, my voice trembling with suppressed fury. "You call this fun, humiliating a child? Is that the kind of behavior you encourage?" "Oh, Lydia, don't be so dramatic," she said, rolling her eyes. "It's a misunderstanding. The tag is just a logistical thing." They were closing ranks, presenting a united front of denial and gaslighting. They were going to pretend this was all a simple mistake, that I was overreacting. They would twist the narrative until I was the villain for being upset, and they were the innocent victims of my drama. But this time I had heard the whisper. I had the truth. "No," I said, my voice gaining strength. "It's not a misunderstanding. Mark just explained it to me. No food. That's what it means, isn't it?" The color drained from Mark's face. Susan shot him a venomous look. The secret was out. The quiet, ugly little truth had been spoken aloud. I didn't wait for their response. I didn't need one. Their faces told me everything I needed to know. The betrayal wasn't just a passive slight. It was an active, calculated act of exclusion. They had planned this. They had discussed it. My mother, my brother, my sister-in-law, they had all agreed to this. To invite us, a mother and her child, to a party and deny us a meal. To label my daughter as less than in front of everyone. I looked at their smug, defiant faces and then down at my crying daughter. In that moment, something inside me shifted. The hope for acceptance died, and in its place, a cold, hard resolve began to form. They thought I would argue. They thought I would make a scene, cry, plead, or storm out in a huff. They expected drama. They were about to be very, very disappointed. While my daughter sobbed into my side and my family members exchanged panicked, guilty glances, my mind went into a strange state of hyperclarity. The emotional storm receded, replaced by the calm, analytical mindset I used for my job. As an event planner, my role is to see all the moving parts, to understand the logistics, the finances, and the motivations behind every decision. I looked at the scene before me not as a wronged daughter and mother, but as a professional assessing a catastrophically mismanaged event. The lie was the budget. The caterer is charging per head, Mark had said. It was a plausible excuse on the surface, but it didn't hold up to scrutiny. My mother had thrown parties for years. She knew how to budget. To deliberately exclude 2 family members, one of them a child, over what would amount to a trivial sum in the context of this lavish party was not a financial decision. It was a statement. But what statement were they trying to make? And more importantly, what were the logistics of the real party? My professional curiosity was piqued, overriding my personal pain. I needed more information. I gently steered Lily towards a quiet corner of the living room, away from the toxic nexus of our family. I sat her down on an armchair, wiped her tears with my thumb, and spoke to her in a low, soothing voice. "Honey, I am so sorry. This is not okay, but I need you to be a brave girl for me for just a few more minutes. Can you do that?" She nodded, her little chin trembling. "Why are they so mean, Mommy?" "I don't know, sweetheart," I answered truthfully. "But we're not going to let them ruin our day. I just need to figure something out. Stay right here." I left her with my phone, open to her favorite game, creating a small bubble of digital distraction for her. Then, I turned my attention back to the party. The first step in any investigation is observation. I started with the catering staff. They were moving with professional efficiency, setting up chafing dishes in the main tent and arranging platters of hors d'oeuvres on trays. I approached a woman who seemed to be in charge, a clipboard in her hand. "Excuse me," I said, putting on my most professional and friendly demeanor. "I'm Lydia, the homeowner's daughter. Everything looks wonderful. I was just curious about the menu you have planned." The catering manager, a woman named Maria, smiled warmly. "Of course, we have a full spread. A carving station with prime rib, a seafood bar with shrimp and oysters, 3 hot entrees, multiple salads, and a full dessert table, as you can see." I nodded, my mind doing a quick calculation. This was not a budget-conscious menu. This was a high-end, premium catering package. The cost per head would be significant. "It sounds incredible," I said. My mother was worried about the numbers. "What was the final guest count you were given?" Maria flipped a page on her clipboard. "The final guaranteed number we received was for 80 guests. Mrs. Rachel was very specific about that." 80 guests, so they were expecting a large crowd. Excluding 2 people from a group of 82 would be a negligible saving. The budget excuse was not just thin, it was non-existent. My next stop was the bar, which was being set up on the patio. 2 bartenders were polishing glasses. I saw top-shelf liquor lining the counter. I also saw something else, tucked away at the end of the bar, a large, ornate, multi-tiered cake. It was a professional bakery cake, easily costing several $100s. It was decorated with the number 70 in elegant gold icing. My father was turning 70. This wasn't just a birthday party. This was a milestone event, and they had designated his only granddaughter as a limited guest. The pieces were starting to click into place, forming a picture of deliberate, malicious exclusion. This wasn't about money. This was about status. This was about demonstrating, in the most public way possible, who was in the inner circle and who was out. My investigation needed one final piece of confirmation. I needed to see the master plan. As an event planner, I knew there would be one. A seating chart, a guest list, a master document outlining the entire event. My mother was meticulous. She would have everything written down. I slipped away from the main party area and went to my mother's small home office, just off the kitchen. I knew she kept a folder for every event she hosted. The door was slightly ajar. I peeked inside. The room was empty. On her desk, lying open, was a pristine white binder. The cover, in my mother's perfect script, read, "Dad's 70th birthday bash." My heart pounded in my chest as I stepped into the room. I flipped open the binder. It was exactly what I expected. There were contracts for the caterer, the tent rental, the bakery. And then I found it, the guest list. It was an Excel spreadsheet, printed out and organized alphabetically. 80 names. Friends, neighbors, extended family. At the very bottom of the page, separated by a distinct line, were 2 more names, written in by hand, Lydia and Lily. And next to our names was a handwritten note, "Limited guests, no meal charge. Seat at small table by kitchen entrance if space needed." The cold, calculated cruelty of it took my breath away. They had a contingency plan to seat us by the kitchen, like staff. The no meal charge confirmed everything Mark had whispered. It was all there, in black and white. But it was the next page that delivered the final, devastating blow. It was a copy of an email chain between my mother, my brother Mark, and my sister-in-law Susan. The subject line was "Party Logistics." I scanned the contents, my blood turning to ice. Susan, just confirming the plan for Lydia and her daughter. Are we sure about the limited status? It seems a bit harsh. Mark, it's not harsh, it's practical. We can't have her thinking she can just show up and be on the same level. She needs to understand her position. Besides, the money saved can go towards the open bar. Mom, Mark is right. This is for the best. It's important that Lydia understands that her choices have consequences. We need to maintain a united front on this. We will give them name tags so the catering staff knows not to serve them. It's the cleanest way to handle it. We will tell her it's a budget issue if she asks. My choices have consequences. What choices? The choice to leave a loveless marriage, the choice to raise my daughter on my own, the choice to build a successful career without a man by my side. This wasn't just about a party. This was a punishment for not living the life they had envisioned. Army, they saw me not as a successful single mother, but as a failure, a charity case, someone to be managed and controlled. The limited guest tag wasn't just a label, it was a judgment. I closed the binder, my hands steady. The rage was still there, but it was now a cold, focused energy. I was no longer just a mother protecting her child. I was an event planner who had just uncovered a conspiracy to sabotage a key stakeholder's experience. And I knew exactly how to dismantle an event from the inside out. All it would take was a few phone calls. I walked out of the office, the email's venomous words seared into my brain. The hurt was immense, a deep, aching wound. But the clarity of purpose was even greater. They expected me to argue, to make a scene, to give them the drama they clearly craved. I would do none of those things. My response would be quiet, professional, and utterly devastating. I returned to the living room where Lily was still engrossed in her game, a temporary reprieve from the family's toxicity. I knelt beside her. "Hey, sweetie, how would you like to go get some ice cream? Just you and me." Her eyes lit up, the first genuine spark of happiness I'd seen since we arrived. "Really? Can we get the kind with the sprinkles?" "We can get any kind you want," I said, my voice soft. "But first, Mommy has to make a very important phone call. It will only take a minute." I took out my phone. My first call was not to a family member. It was to a business contact. As an event planner, I had built a wide network of vendors across the city. I knew the owners, the managers, the head chefs. I knew who to call to get things done quickly. The name on the side of the catering van had been Prestige Catering. I knew the owner, a man named David Chen, very well. We had worked together on a dozen events. I found his number in my contacts and stepped out onto the front porch, away from prying ears. He answered on the second ring. "David, it's Lydia," I said, my voice calm and even. "Lydia, what a pleasant surprise. To what do I owe the pleasure?" "I'm actually at an event your team is working right now," I said. "A birthday party for a Mr. Phillips." "Ah, yes, my team is on site. I hope everything is to your satisfaction." Everything looks wonderful, I said, but there's been a significant last-minute change of plans. The host of the party, my father, has been unexpectedly taken ill. We need to cancel the entire event. Immediately. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Cancel? Lydia, my team is already there. The food is prepared. I understand, David, I said, my voice full of feigned regret. And I know this is highly unusual, but this is a family emergency. The guest of honor is on his way to the hospital. A necessary lie to ensure swift, unquestioning action. I am, of course, personally guaranteeing the full payment for the contract. You will not be out of pocket for this, but I need you to instruct your team to pack everything up and leave within the next 30 minutes. This was the key. Offering to personally cover the cost removed any financial obstacle and signaled the seriousness of the situation. David knew me. He knew my professional reputation. He knew I would make good on my promise. "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry to hear that," he said, his tone shifting to one of concern. "Of course, Lydia. Family comes first. I'll call my on-site manager right now and tell them to begin packing up. Please send my best wishes to your father for a speedy recovery." "Thank you, David. I appreciate your discretion and your quick action," I said. "Don't think twice about it," he replied. "I'm on it." I hung up. Phase 1 was complete. The food, the centerpiece of their social gathering, would soon be gone. My next call was to another vendor I had spotted on my brief investigation. Elite Bar Services. I didn't know the owner personally, but in the event planning world, everyone knows everyone. I used the same story. A sudden family emergency. The guest of honor taken to the hospital. The party was canceled. Again, I personally guaranteed the full invoice. The response was the same: concern, condolences, and a promise to have their bartenders packed up and gone within the half hour. The final piece of the puzzle was the magnificent, multi-tiered birthday cake. I had seen the box from the Sweet Art Bakery tucked away in the kitchen. I knew the owner, a lovely French woman named Monique, from a wedding I had planned last year. I called her. "Monique, it's Lydia Vance." "Lydia, my dear, how are you?" "I'm afraid I'm calling with some unfortunate news," I said, repeating my now-practiced story. "I'm at my father's 70th birthday party, and he's been taken ill. We've had to cancel everything." "Oh, the beautiful cake," she gasped. "Is there anything I can do?" "Actually, there is," I said. "Could you possibly send a driver to come and pick up the cake? I don't want it to go to waste. I would like to donate it to the children's wing of the city hospital. I'll cover any costs for the transport and donation, of course." Donating the cake was a stroke of genius, if I did say so myself. It was a move that was both charitable and undeniably final. They wouldn't just be missing a cake, they would know it had been given away, put to a better use than celebrating a family that had shown such cruelty. "What a wonderful, generous idea in such a difficult moment," Monique said, her voice warm with approval. "Consider it done, Lydia. I will send my best driver right away. And please, this one is on me. It is the least I can do." I thanked her profusely and ended the call. It was done. In the space of less than 10 minutes, I had systematically dismantled the entire party. The food, the drinks, and the cake, the holy trinity of any celebration, were now scheduled for removal. I took a deep breath, a sense of grim satisfaction settling over me. They wanted to make a statement about my position. Fine. I had just made a statement of my own. My position was one of competence, influence, and the ability to get things done. I had used the very skills I had built my independent life upon to unravel their petty, pathetic power play. I walked back into the house, my phone in my pocket. My face was a perfect mask of calm. I went over to Lily, who was still playing her game. "Ready for that ice cream, sweetheart?" She nodded eagerly, slipping her small hand into mine. I looked up and caught Susan's eye from across the room. She was watching me, a smug, curious look on her face. She was probably wondering what my next move would be. A tearful confrontation, a dramatic exit. I gave her a small, enigmatic smile. Then, holding my daughter's hand, I turned and walked toward the front door. We didn't storm out. We simply left. The words on my phone, sent as I crossed the threshold, were not to them but to my father. Dad, so sorry we had to leave. Lily wasn't feeling well. Hope you have a wonderful birthday. As the front door clicked shut behind us, I knew the chaos was only just beginning. 30 minutes. That's all it would take. 30 minutes until my mother, my brother, and my sister-in-law discovered that their perfectly planned party had been canceled out from under them, and they would have no one to blame but themselves. The drive to the ice cream parlor was surreal. Lily, now free from the oppressive atmosphere of my parents' house, chattered happily about flavors and toppings. The sun streamed through the windshield, and for a few precious minutes, I could almost forget the ugly scene we had left behind. Almost. I ordered Lily a double scoop of strawberry with extra rainbow sprinkles, her favorite. As I sat opposite her in the brightly colored booth, watching her face light up with pure, simple joy, the enormity of what I had done began to sink in. I had detonated a bomb in the middle of my family's most important social event of the year. The fallout was going to be immense. My phone remained silent for 27 minutes. It was the calm before the storm. I ate my own scoop of mint chocolate chip slowly, savoring the cool sweetness, steeling myself for what was to come. At the 30-minute mark, precisely as predicted, my phone buzzed. It was my mother. I ignored the call. A second later, a text message appeared. "Mom, Lydia, what is going on? The caterers are packing up. They said you canceled everything. Call me immediately." I took a slow sip of my water. I did not reply. A minute later, my phone rang again. This time it was Mark. I let it go to voicemail. A text followed immediately. "Mark, what the hell did you do? The bartenders are leaving, and a guy from the bakery is here to take the cake. He said it's being donated. You have lost your mind. Call me now." The capital letters betrayed his panic. I could picture the scene perfectly. The guests would be arriving any minute, walking into a garden party with no food, no drinks, and no cake. My mother would be frantic. Susan would be furious. Mark would be apoplectic. Then came the text from Susan. "Susan, you are a vindictive, selfish witch. You have ruined your father's birthday. I hope you're happy." I read her message and fee. LT nothing. Her words had lost their power to wound me. The limited guest tag, the whispers, the laughter of her children that had been hurtful. This was just the impotent rage of a bully who had lost control. I focused on my daughter, who was now meticulously eating the sprinkles off her ice cream with her spoon. This was what mattered, protecting her. Showing her that you do not have to accept cruelty, that you have the power to draw a line. After another 10 minutes of silence from my end, during which my phone buzzed with more calls from all three of them, my mother sent a final, desperate text. "Mom, please, Lydia, people are arriving. I don't understand why you would do this. Please tell me what happened." That was the one I chose to answer. Her feigned ignorance was the most insulting part of it all. I typed a simple, direct reply. "Me, I know about the guest list. I know about the email. I know the limited guest tag meant no food for my daughter. I didn't argue. I just solved the budget problem for you. You're welcome." I hit send, then I turned my phone off. The rest of the afternoon was ours. I took Lily to the park. We went on the swings, fed the ducks, and lay on the grass, looking for shapes in the clouds. I was fully present with her, pushing the family drama to the back of my mind. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. I had taken control of a situation in which I was meant to have none. I turned my phone back on later that evening, after Lily was safely tucked in bed. I had over 20 missed calls and a flood of text messages. I also had an email from my father. His email was short and to the point. Subject, tonight. Body, Lydia, your mother told me what happened. I am so deeply sorry. I had no idea about any of this. We need to talk. I love you and Lily more than words can say. Love, Dad. His message was a balm on a very raw wound. He hadn't known. I had suspected as much. My father was a kind, decent man who would never have condoned such cruelty. He was often just oblivious to the subtle social maneuvering of my mother and Susan. The text messages from the others painted a vivid picture of the party's collapse. Friends and family had arrived to find a beautiful but empty tent. My mother had apparently tried to salvage the situation, sending Mark on a frantic run for pizzas and soda, but the damage was done. The meticulously planned 70th birthday bash had become a fiasco. Rumors were flying. The story my mother tried to spin, that the caterer had canceled last minute, had been quickly debunked by guests who had seen the trucks being packed up. The confrontation came the next day. My mother, brother, and sister-in-law arrived at my house, unannounced. I saw them pull up from my kitchen window and took a deep breath before opening the door. They looked haggard, my mother's eyes were red-rimmed, Mark looked furious, Susan looked venomous. "How could you?" my mother began, her voice cracking. "How could you humiliate us like that?" I didn't invite them in. I stood in the doorway, my arms crossed. "Humiliate you? Really? Is that what you think happened? I think you have it backwards. You humiliated my daughter. You deliberately and maliciously planned to treat a 10-year-old child like a second-class citizen at her own grandfather's birthday party. What I did was simply a reaction to that." "It was a misunderstanding," Susan snapped. "A logistical issue that you blew completely out of proportion." "Was the email a misunderstanding, Susan?" I asked, my voice cold as ice. "The one where you all discussed the need to maintain a united front and teach me that my choices have consequences. The one where Mark said the money saved on my daughter's food could go towards the open bar." Silence. Their faces were a picture of guilt and shock. They hadn't known I'd seen the email. That was my trump card. Mark stammered, "You went through Mom's private things." "You left the binder open on the desk," I replied flatly. "But let's not get distracted. Let's talk about the choices. What choices exactly was I being punished for? The choice to not stay in a miserable marriage? The choice to raise my daughter to be a kind and happy person on my own? The choice to be financially independent? You need to tell me, because I'm really curious." They had no answer. They just stood there, exposed and ashamed. "You didn't want a daughter or a sister," I continued, the words I had held back for years finally pouring out. "You wanted a subordinate, someone to fit into the neat little box you designed, and when I didn't, you decided to punish me. And worse, you decided to punish my child. You used her to get to me, and that is where this ends." I looked at my mother, the architect of it all. "You talk about humiliation," I said, my voice softening slightly with the weight of my sorrow. "I have felt humiliated by you for years, every time you've praised Mark's life will. Subtly criticizing mine. Every time you've treated Lily as an afterthought compared to his children. Yesterday was just the first time you were crass enough to write it on a name tag." Tears were now streaming down my mother's face. I didn't mean for it to be like this." "But it is," I said. "And I'm done, we are done. Until you can look me in the eye and give me a genuine, honest apology, not for the party being ruined, but for your behavior, we have nothing more to say to each other." I looked at Mark and Susan. "And as for you two, stay away from me and my daughter. You have shown me who you are, I believe you." With that, I closed the door. I leaned against it, my heart pounding, my body trembling. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. But as I stood there, in the quiet of my own home, I felt a profound sense of release. The confrontation was over. The toxic ties had been cut. The long, painful chapter of seeking their approval was finally, blessedly, closed. The days following the confrontation were quiet. The angry calls and texts ceased, replaced by a wall of silence from my mother, brother, and sister-in-law. It was a strange feeling, like the phantom limb of a relationship that had been amputated. There was an ache where something used to be, but there was also a newfound freedom. The first person to breach the silence was my father. He called a few days later and asked if he could take Lily and me to dinner. Not at their house, but at a neutral location, a quiet Italian restaurant we both loved. I agreed. When we met, he looked older, wearier. He hugged me tightly and then knelt down to hug Lily. "I am so, so sorry, sweet pea," he said to her, his voice thick with emotion. "What happened at the party was wrong. You are the most important guest in the world to me." Lily, with the simple grace of a child, just hugged him back. "It's okay, Grandpa." Over dinner, my father was candid. He told me he had confronted my mother, Mark, and Susan. He had seen the email for himself and was, in his words, appalled and heartbroken. "I have been blind, Lydia," he confessed, stirring his coffee. "I see that now. I let your mother and brother's narrative about you go unchallenged. I saw the little slights, the backhanded compliments, but I told myself it was just family dynamics that I shouldn't interfere. I was wrong. My silence was a form of approval, and I will regret that for the rest of my life." He explained that my mother was devastated, but for all the wrong reasons. She was humiliated that her party had been ruined and that her social standing had taken a hit. She was struggling to accept her own culpability. Mark and Susan were simply angry, doubling down on their belief that I was the one who had behaved abominably. "It might be a long time before they are ready to truly apologize," he said, his eyes meeting mine. "But I am not waiting for them. My relationship with you and my granddaughter is my priority. From now on, things will be different." And they were. My father started making a conscious effort to be a separate entity from the rest of the family. He began visiting us on his own, taking Lily to the park, coming over for dinner. He wanted to build a relationship with us based on his own terms, not on my mother's. It was a slow process, rebuilding a trust that had been eroded by years of neglect, but it was a start. Weeks turned into months. The holidays approached, and with them, the inevitable question of family gatherings. My father called me, his voice hesitant. "Your mother wants to host Christmas Eve dinner. She wants everyone to be there, to try and move past this." I thought about it for a long moment. "Dad," I said gently, "has she ever apologized to me, or to Lily?" He sighed. "No, she talks about putting the unpleasantness behind us." "Then my answer is no," I said, my voice firm but without malice. Forgiveness isn't about pretending something didn't happen. It's about acknowledging the hurt and committing to change. She's not there yet. So, Lily and I will be making our own Christmas Eve traditions this year. It was a difficult decision, but a necessary one. That Christmas Eve, Lily and I stayed home. We baked cookies, watched classic holiday movies, and drank hot chocolate by the fireplace. My father came over for a few hours in the afternoon, bringing gifts and his quiet, steady presence. It was peaceful. It was happy. It was ours. The story of the limited guest party became a quiet legend in our extended family. Those who had been there knew something had gone spectacularly wrong. My actions were debated, I'm sure. Some probably saw me as vindictive, just as Susan had said. But others, I think, saw it for what it was, a line being drawn in the sand. A year later, on my father's 71st birthday, he didn't have a big party. Instead, he asked me to plan a small dinner for him. "Just the people who truly matter," he said. The guest list was short: me, Lily, my father, and a few of his closest, kindest friends. There was no tent, no caterers, no name tags. We ate a simple, delicious meal. We shared stories. We laughed. My father sat at the head of the table, Lily on one side, me on the other, and he looked truly happy. As I watched him blow out the single candle on his small birthday cake, I realized that my definition of family had changed. It wasn't about blood or obligation. It was about respect, kindness, and unconditional love. It was about who showed up for you, not just for the parties, but for the quiet moments in between. I never did receive a real apology from my mother or my brother. Our relationship remains distant, a polite but hollow connection maintained through my father. But I no longer ache for their approval. The hole they left in my life has been filled with self-respect, peace, and the joyful laughter of my daughter. I took away an invaluable lesson from that painful day. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is not to argue, not to raise your voice, but to simply take out your phone and type, "Cancel everything." Because in doing so, you are not just canceling a party. You are canceling a toxic narrative. You are canceling your role in a dysfunctional drama. and you are making space for something new, something better, something real. You are choosing your own guest list for life. And on that list, you and your loved ones are never, ever limited.